What's up? I'm Beau.
I'm Cody, and we're going to be talking about developing resistance training programs.
Alright, so the first thing we're going to talk about is individualizing the program. First thing you want to do is consult with your client. So you're going to want to sit down with them, just get their background and history of training. So figure out how long they've been training, if they even have been training, what they know about training, just everything in general about them. Get their age, all that stuff. Okay, next thing we're going to do is discuss primary goals and commitment level. So this is very important. So first thing we're going to want to do is see, for one, what their goals are. What are they trying to gain weight? Are they trying to lose weight? Trying to be more muscular, stronger, just anything within fitness. What is their fitness goal? Second thing is their commitment level. So how many days a week are they going to come? They're going to come 2 days a week. They're going to come Tuesday, Thursday. They're going to come 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. It doesn't matter, but you do need to sit down and figure out what their commitment level is, because the number one thing in training is consistency. If you don't have consistency, then it just doesn't work out. So you, for one, have to be committed to your client. So as me as a coach, I have to show up every day as well as them. Keep it going. Yeah. Okay, so after you get done with that, we're going to go to determine access to equipment and type of resistant program. So for determining the access to equipment, that's obviously going to determine where you go. If you go to a local gym, if you're going to a Planet Fitness, what time, just anything. For equipment, most gyms are going to have your basic equipment, so a squat rack, a bench rack, just dumbbells, just that's the basic stuff. For other equipment, such as maybe like bands, chains, just any extra stuff, that will definitely come into play in that. For type of resistance program, this is going back to their primary goals and the consult with the client. So for whatever their goal was, is going to determine what type of resistance program you're going to do. If they are looking for strength training, you will develop your program around strength training. If they're looking for endurance training, you're going to develop your program around endurance training. So it's pretty simple with that. So whatever their goal is going to determine what kind of perform and analyze a muscular fitness assessment. For this, you just want to kind of figure out where your client is. So figuring out like what muscle groups need to be targeted, and just really where they are at before you get started. Order exercises appropriately. So this is pretty simple. You just don't want your client to be working the same muscle in one exercise and then go to another exercise and be doing the same thing. So I wouldn't want to do a back squat with leg extensions. They both work your quads. So you wouldn't want to put those two together. Determining starting loads, reps, and sets for each exercise. When starting out, let's just use the back squat for example. I'm not going to have my client do a 1 rep max. Is not adapted to it, so I would have them do a lighter load with higher reps to start out instead of doing high weight. So set guidelines for progressive overload. We'll talk more about this later, but basically you're going to progressively overload your clients so they can continue to get better. The number one rule of thumb is manipulating the intensity, duration, and frequency of the exercise program so that your client can get better.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the training principles to create a resistance training program. So just to run through them really quick, you have specificity, principal overload, progression, initial values, inter-individual variability, diminishing returns, reversibility, and periodization techniques.
Next thing we're going to talk about is specificity principle. So that is development of muscular fitness is specific to the muscle group, the type of muscle action, and the training intensity. So an example for that would be to increase strength of elbow flexors. So if you want to increase your bicep. So exercise must involve the concentric and eccentric actions for the muscle group. So eccentric is lowering, concentric would be coming back up. Another example for strength training. So if you were wanting to get stronger, what you would do is you would perform exercises at high intensities and with low reps. So you would have high weight, low reps. Okay. An example for endurance training would be performing exercises at low intensity with high reps. So you would have low weight, high reps.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the overload principle, and what this means is that to promote strength or endurance gains for your client, the muscle groups must be exercised at a workload that is greater than normal for your client. So you're not going to want to keep doing the same thing over and over again. You want to progressively increase weight or reps so that the muscles are able to adapt. A minimum of 60% of maximum is required to stimulate development. So more specifically for strength gains, you want to exercise near a maximum. So that means 80 to 100%. For endurance gains, you can exercise at a minimum of 30%, but exercises should be exercised to the point of fatigue.
Next thing we're going to talk about is the progression principle. What this means is periodically increasing the training volume or total amount of work to overload the muscle for continual improvements. So if I have my client starting off on their baseline back squat, so they're going to start off, let's just say 135. They're going to I will progressively increase that weight through the programming. Progression needs to be gradual to avoid injury. So I'm not going to jump from 135 to 225 within a week. They won't be able, their bodies haven't adapted to that, and they will be more susceptible for injury. Client will adapt to training stimulus. This will be indication of improvement, and it will be necessary to increase the resistance. So if he starts off at 135, by weeks 3 and 4, they should be repping that out easy. So you would want to increase the weight. So if I'm at 135, maybe increase it up to 155 or 185, depending on if they are ready for that. So some examples of progression would be increasing reps at selected intensity. So if I'm doing 8 reps at 50%, the following week I'll do 12 reps at 50%. So just increasing the reps. Another thing we can do is alternating the speed of the movement. So by putting a tempo in, so let's say you're doing back squat, you can go 3 seconds down and then explode up. Or you could go 3 seconds down, hold at the bottom, 2 seconds, and explode up, just whatever. Varying duration of rest between exercises. So if I have my client resting at 4 minutes between each set, maybe that following week I'll have him rest at 3 minutes between each set.
So some additional principles to consider while you're training your client would be initial values and inter-individual variability. This is saying that a client starting with lower relative strength will have greater relative gains at a faster rate of improvement as opposed to somebody who has a higher level of strength. Diminishing returns refers to as the client progresses through their program, they're going to eventually reach a plateau or get closer to their genetic ceiling, meaning that they're only going to improve so much until they physically can't improve anymore. Reversibility refers to when you're done training or you stop training, how all the gains that you made physiologically will digress as you stop training. Periodization techniques are ways that you can maintain your strength or improve so that you won't plateau. And that you can maintain your strength throughout and not lose the gains that you've made. Okay, so now we're going to give you a real life example of a resistance training program. We're going to use Beau as our example, as our client. So his primary goals for the strength or for the program that he's currently doing are strength and endurance specific, but with an emphasis on strength training. He works out 5 times a week at a minimum and has access to a full gym here at Swastika, so he's not really limited in what he can do. His fitness assessment, he's not a new lifter. He's been lifting for a while, so that's kind of irrelevant for this. Based on his goals, so for example, squat starting 1 rep max was 350. From there, he's doing 3-week cycles with a deload week after that. He's staying within a 75, working up to about a 90-95% as he goes through the 3 weeks, with the deload staying at around 70. And then he'll hit a 3 rep max to determine the percentages for the following cycle. So that would be his guidelines for progressive overload and continuing his training.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about my training program, what I do, how I incorporate all these principles into my program. So let me kind of Kodee kind of gave you a quick background on what I do. I'll go a little bit more into depth on that. So I do emphasize strength training in my programming, more specific than that, Olympic weightlifting. And then from the endurance side, I do more speed work, more sprints. No, I don't do much long distance. So I keep it within like 40s, 30s, 20s. So that's about all the running that I do. Let's go and look at my programming. I have here on Excel weeks 1 through 8. So I have 2 cycles in this. I have 3 weeks, the first 3 weeks, and then the 4th week is my deload week, and then I'm going to come back, hit a 3 rep max to determine what my 1 rep max would now be. If it is the same, then nothing is going to change. All my percentages are going to stay the same. If it is increased, then I will increase the weight according to the weight that I just put up. So let's go ahead and look at this. So like I said, I have weeks 1 through 8 on this. Let me actually stand up with this, it'll be easier. I have Monday's workout, I have Tuesday's workout, Thursday and Friday. I know I said I worked out 5 days a week. I usually use Wednesday as an active recovery day. So I'll go to the pool, I'll do yoga or a light workout just to get some blood flowing to my muscles. So what you can see here is I got all weeks 1 through 8 right here. I got my numbers in there and everything is already done. I know what I need to do. All I gotta do is follow my programming. Alright, so now that you've kind of seen what I do, I can go more in depth to it. So for week 1 of my programming, I'm going to, or after I get my 3 rep max, I'll go into week 1, have my percentages already in place. I know what weights I'm doing. I just got to do them. So what I would do is for week 1, I would go 80% at I would go, let's say 5 by 5 is what I would start out with. That's an easy way to start. So I would go 80% of 5 sets of 5 reps, and then increasing that within the 80 to 82.5%. I wouldn't get any higher than that on my week 1. For week 2, I would do 85 to 87.5%, and I wouldn't increase any more than that. And then on week 3, I am at 90% all the way up into 95%. I didn't go into my reps, so for week 1, 5 by 5. Week 2, I'd probably do something like 4 by 3 or 4 by 3 to 5, depending on how I feel after that 3rd rep. And for my week 3, I would do singles or doubles. I wouldn't go any higher than that. So for my 90 to 95%, I'm hitting singles. Let's say 5 by 1 at my 90 to 95%. If I'm feeling good, I'll go ahead and hit that 2nd rep. And then for week 4, that is my deload week. So I have progressed all the way from 80% to 95. And then week 4, I will deload and I will go no higher than 70% on all my lifts. So if I'm hitting 95% of the week before, that next week 70%. It doesn't matter if I feel good or not, and I know I can go higher. I'm always going to deload after that 3rd week, just so I can get, I can recover and I can come back even stronger. So after I would do that, I would then go ahead and get my 3 rep max again. like I said, and then I would go off percentages of my new numbers. Alright, so now I kind of want to talk about how I would, I don't always just go off percentage, or I do my percentages, and then I want to show you how I incorporate tempos and other things into my programming. So if I'm going to try to peak myself, let's give an example. I'm trying to peak myself for 6 weeks. So in 6 weeks I have a competition, let's just say, and I want to get as fast and strong as I can in that 6 weeks. So for that first week, I'm going to use my percentages with no tempos at all. For that next week, I'm going to use an eccentric tempo for 2 weeks. So, if I'm doing back squat, I want to go 4 seconds down on my back squat and then explode up. For the next week, I'm going to only do isometric work. So I'm going to go down as quick as I can and try to stop myself, hold in the bottom for 2 to 3 seconds, and then explode up. For that the next week, I'm going to do a concentric movement. So I'm either going to do banded squat with light weight, won't have but 70 or 65 or lower on my concentric phase, but I will have bands on that. So I'm going to basically just do it as fast as I can. If you don't have bands or chains, then you could just perform a back squat as fast as you can. So same thing, you're staying 65 or below, and you're just gonna do that for, let's say, 5 sets of 3, and you're gonna hit those 3 as fast as you can. And then that's what I would do for my tempos. So I would train, I actually read a book, believe it or not, I read a book on triphasic training. Cal Dietz, check him out. He has basically figured out how to train the eccentric, isometric, and concentric phases of weightlifting. So the last thing I want to talk about in my programming is I want to go back really to the beginning, and I want to talk about goals and commitment and stuff like that. So programming and all this stuff is nice. It looks good, but if you don't have consistency, it's not going to work. And commitment. So yeah, I could do all this programming and figure out what weights I need to do and everything, but if I don't have my consistency and I don't stick with my goals, then none of this is going to work. I'm pretty dedicated myself. I make sure that I show up every day. I hit my weight or hit my sets and everything that I need to do, and it works for me. So just number one rule I like to use is consistency. If I'm not consistent, then it's not going to work. So